Let's now discuss the fourth part of generativism, that is Transcendental Idealism. Immanuel Kant was a German philosopher who is considered a central figure in modern philosophy. He believed that space and time are the forms of our sensibility. Sensibility, that they are responsible for generating or triggering our senses or sensory responses, our feelings, our perceptions, because human mind creates the structure of human experiences, and that the world in itself is independent of our concept of it. So, world in itself is independent of how we look at it, what is our concept of it, and it is through space and time which are responsible in creating the system or image of that world which we find around us. So three things he has laid down: space, time, and our experiences. Kant proposes theory of transcendental idealism. So what he thinks of transcendental, he says that I call all knowledge transcendental if it is occupied, if it is being engaged, if that knowledge is in a process or one is in a process of knowing the knowledge, not with objects, but with the way that we can possibly know objects, even before we experience them. So basically what he says, that knowledge is not the objects, but how or the way you look at or perceive that knowledge is what is transcendental. What is transcendental idealism? According to Kant, as the senses never in no single instance enable us to know things in themselves, but only their appearances, and as these are mere representations, all bodies, together with the space in which they are, must be held to be nothing but mere representation in us, and exist nowhere else than merely in our thoughts. So as the senses, they don't enable us to know things in themselves, but only their appearances. And as they are mere representation, together with the space in which they are, but mere representation in us, and exist nowhere else than merely in our thoughts. So basically, when you're looking at things, you cannot perceive them as they are, but the factor that they are there in the space, they are there, and by in the space around you, things which are available around you, you have to reach out to them and find out something which is there in the space. A process from looking at it and perceiving they are is going to determine the concept of transcendental idealism. Kant forms his theory based on a delineation of the types of knowledge. So basically, he has outlined three types which constitute our understanding of knowledge that are possible and arrives at a priori analytic. This is the knowledge which type of knowledge which basically does not add anything new to our existing knowledge. For example, if you say a sentence that bachelors are unmarried men, then this particular piece of knowledge does not add anything new to your existing knowledge. A priori synthetic is that, yes, something that adds to your existing knowledge. Apples taste good. They are telling you something about the apple. You know the apple is a fruit, but it is or it tastes good is something, an additional piece of information and knowledge that you are getting. And the third is a posteriori synthetic, which refers to driving our conclusion from the experiences around us. Conclusions as our ultimate source of knowledge. Let's understand the key features of Kant's theory. Number one is concepts without perceptions are empty. Kant agreed with the behaviorists that concepts without perceptions are empty, that concepts, ideas alone cannot constitute knowledge. Innate ideas do not constitute knowledge. There must be experiences for there to be a knowledge. Perceptions without concepts are blind. However, he also agreed with the rationalist that perceptions without concepts are blind. Merely having experiences or perceptions also does not constitute knowledge. There must be some way in which the mind organizes or structures experiences for there to be knowledge. It is true that all knowledge begins with experience. He says that without experience, no knowledge takes place. Experience is the initiator of coming or possessing knowledge. It is not true that all knowledge arises from experience. He also believes that it is not always true that all type of knowledge arise from experience. Experience is not the sole source of knowledge. There must be categories by which experience is structured, understood. Phenomenal realm and nominal realm. He affirmed the mind is active in knowing process, and mind makes an active contribution to the world as it is known. The world as it is known is phenomenal realm, which conforms to the mind in the knowledge process, rather than the mind conforming to a world that has its own mind-independent structure. This knowledge has profoundly subjective dimension and known as noumenal realm. Categories of the understanding, which is cause and effect. These categories are the ways in which the active mind forms or structures experience. For Kant, there were 12 such categories, one of which was the category of cause and effect. That there are certain elements which act as cause, and based on those causes, effects are generated. Synthetic a priori truth. These are the truth as mentioned, which are universal and necessary. They are the truths, they stand on their own, and they are there in each and every part of the world, standing as universal truths. Looking at this image, you will see that this is noumenal realm, which is considered as the external reality. And this is phenomenal realm, which is considered as whatever is there in one's mind. This is internal reality. So he says we cannot know reality in itself, but only as it is to me. The mind imposed or organizes the raw data of experience according to the categories of space, time, and causality. So basically space and time through which you perceive or look at this external reality, they create the understanding. Thus, space, time, and causality are not true of thing in itself, which is external reality, but are only true to thing to me, which is the internal reality. This enables us to have certainty of things like causality, since we never experience reality ourselves otherwise except according to the categories which are shaped here. To sum up, Kant believes that our knowledge is gained from empirical encounters and rational operations, and that achievements of knowledge are not attained by the purely empirical or purely rational approaches. Rather, the very nature of the human understanding itself makes experience possible and available to reasons.